Welcome back to the continuation from the previous lesson. In the previous lesson, we discussed the listening question types. In this lesson, we're going to look at the other three question types which we have left. In our previous lesson, we learned 3 question types out of the 6 question types which we're going to learn throughout this listening module. Also, we do some listening practice, which you can listen to the audio recording over and over again. It is important that you understand the question types and the instruction. The instruction to the questions are very, very important in terms of the number of words, in terms of the right way to present your answers. These are very, very important. Also, it is important for you to skim through the questions before the audio starts. You remember you have some time, about 30 seconds, to go through the questions before you listen. This is a golden opportunity for you to master these questions before the audio recording starts. Furthermore, in order for you to quickly get the right answer, it is important for you to underline the keywords from the questions and maybe also from the options if it is a multiple choice question. What are the ways to do this? I mentioned the WH method in our previous lesson. Please go through that lesson again. WH method can help you to identify the keywords in questions. And finally, it is important for you to pay rapt attention during the listening and also follow through the recordings, as we could see that the questions are always in order of the recordings. And manage your time. Managing your time is very, very important. So in terms of time management, includes understanding what you should do before you listen, understanding what you should do after you have listened. I hope you understand this. Let's get it started. All right, we're going to begin with diagram, map, form completion question types. It entails a diagram like it is named, or a map, or a form, or a table in form of a table, and then you will be asked to fill this diagram or map or table following the information you've heard in the audio recording. This could be challenging, but with persistence, practice, you would scale through this question type. What strategies do you have to take note? You have to take note of names, numbers, location, and also careful understanding of the information, transcription of the information. Some words, you have to use exact word, like I said in the previous lesson. You have to always use exact word you have heard from the audio recording. So this would help you to put down the right answer. Now, this is a table, and we have to listen to an audio recording and then fill the right answer. Before you listen, do you remember what you should do? The first thing is to take notes of the instruction. So the instruction states that no more than 3 words and or a number. The next is to skim through the table. You'll be given some time to check, to go through these questions. So you have to skim through the table. You don't have to understand everything in the table, but take note of the keyword and also the topic of the table. The table stands for something. So for this table, we have it as real world tsunami incidents. Usually tables would have 2 axes. Okay, we have the y-axis and we have the x-axis, vertical axis and also the horizontal axis. So it's always like this. A table would always be like this. So you check the information on this axis and also check the information at the top of the vertical axis, which is the horizontal axis. So here, for the vertical axis, we have the year. So we have 2001 to 2005, then we have 1910. Then on the horizontal axis, we have the course, we have the height, we have the location, and we have the impact. So here, we could understand that this table is talking about tsunami incidents in during some years, and at the same time, what are the causes at these particular years, what are the height of the tsunami, and also the location and impact of this tsunami. So this would help you to understand, okay, this is exactly what this table is all about. Also, it is important to take note of the questions you have to answer, because you are not answering all the questions. You are not filling every information in the table. Your answer should be your priority. So we have question 36, question 37, and also question 38. So these three questions are the questions we want to answer in this listening. Now I'm going to play the audio recording. We're going to answer the questions step by step as the audio recording plays. Take notes. Usually the audio recording will be in order. So let's play the audio recording. As we listen to the audio recording, we answer the questions immediately.
Now listen and answer questions 36 to 40.
Now let's consider a few real-world incidents to illustrate the range of tsunami events. Some are relatively minor. In 2001, a small underwater landslide caused a wave around 1 meter high that reached the coast at low tide near Cape Florence. And since the area was sparsely populated, no injuries were reported. On March 11, 2003, a tremor off the coast of western Peru registered 7.8 on the magnitude scale, yet it had no visible effect on ocean waters. However, a more tragic event occurred in early August 2005, when a wave roughly 27 feet in height hit the southern shore of Alvaro Island, following a magnitude 7.2 undersea quake. The resulting disaster claimed more than 1,400 lives. Later reports indicated a volcanic eruption just 18 miles offshore preceded the wave by less than 12 minutes. Entire communities in the towns of Maruta and Kana were obliterated. Another historical disaster took place in 1910 off the coast of Miyama, a region in northern Japan. A significant seabed quake generated a wave about 32 feet high, leading to the deaths of more than 22,000 individuals. Lastly, researchers estimate that nearly 9,000 years ago, a gigantic underwater slope failure off the edge of present-day Greenland launched a water wall approximately 28 feet tall that struck uninhabited areas along the Scandinavian Arctic coast. Experts suggest that if such an event happened in the modern era, it could lead to hundreds of billions in damage and possibly tens of thousands of fatalities in affected cities. Are there any questions before we move on?
That is the end of part 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers to part 4.
Now we have listened to the audio recording and we have these answers. So 27 feet, which you have 27 as a word and also feet as a word. So here you have two words, 32 and feet, the same thing, obliterated, obliterated. So the next question type we have is the flowchart completion question. So this flowchart completion question is also under these question types we are currently treating. So it's all about being given a diagram and then you answer the question. So as usual, you would have to look at the number of words, you look at the information of the diagram, which is Kelvin observational strategies. But one thing about flowcharts is that it's usually all about how something is done, the process of something. So it's always a flowchart, like something in form of a flow, step by step on how something is done. So we have it as how Kelvin observational strategies unfolds. So here we have question 24, question 25, and question 26, and question 27. Now we want to listen to the audio recording and then answer these questions.
So how do you plan to carry out the peer assessments?
Oh, every pupil will be required to write a diary, which includes group projects, presentations, and in-class discussions. They'll put down their remarks. I'll collect them on a regular basis, which can also help me see whether they can keep up or not.
Excellent. What else are you considering?
In addition, I also plan to do video recording. I've already purchased a camera just in case I miss anything important. I can go back and review their performances anytime I want.
Would you record every in-class activity?
No, I'll just keep track of an in-class simulation, which would require every pupil to fully participate. Students will act as members of a city council meeting, discussing issues like whether or not prohibition should be instated in the United States.
That's a very creative and thought-provoking approach. I'm curious to see how it works out.
Now we have listened to the audio recording and we have our answers. The first is in-class discussions. Now you notice in class, that is a compound word. It is not in class. In class, which is a compound word, so you have to make an hyphen. Try to use an hyphen to join those words together because it is compound. It's an example of a compound word. Then we have video recording, 2 words. We have in-class simulation and we have city council. So these are the answers to this question. You have to write exactly what you heard. Do you understand? You have to write exactly the information you heard. This is how you can correctly get the right answer. Now let's move on to another example of this question type, which is map. So this is an example of a map question. You have been given some words which you need to fill this information. Sometimes the map question type would not provide you with words. So you have to listen and get the right information, then fill in the right answer. But in this case, you have been given the list of words which you need to use in filling these questions. Of course, we have to start from the entrance. So always look down the map or from the left. Usually English diagrams begin from the left hand side or the down part. So these are the 2 places you should look at when you have a diagram or a map like this. So it helps you to know where exactly the audio recording would be starting from. Another way to do this is to look at where the first question is. So here we have question 11 followed by 12 followed by 13, 14 and 15. And of course, you have to also take note of the topic of the map, which is all about town library. It gives you the information of what you want to listen to and the information you should provide. We have got to also take note of the instruction. In this case, we are writing letters and not the words. So write the correct letters, A to I, next to the questions. Now we move on to the next question type, which is short answer question type. So this question type requires that you provide an answer to a question. Similar to the summary completion question type we practiced in the previous lesson, it's all about identifying the keywords in the question and also taking note of numbers, taking note of names or places. So these are key information you need to fill short answer questions. And of course, you have to do more exercises on short answer questions. Now let's check this question type together. So this is an example of a short answer question type. So the information states that we should not write more than 2 words. So you can write 1 word or 2 words. So we have to also look at the keywords. What are the keywords in these questions? Let's listen to the audio recording and answer these questions 24 to 27.
So, let's begin with you, Martin. How are things going?
Well, I've already made a start. I spent last weekend going through a lot of background sources, and I'm hoping to start drafting tomorrow. If all goes well, I'll wrap it up over the weekend.
What topic have you chosen?
I've decided to explore the electronics company Zenith, looking into the reliability issues they had in the 1980s and early 90s, how they addressed those problems, and the way that influenced their branding and promotional campaigns.
That sounds quite engaging. Have you run into any challenges?
Initially, I had some trouble finding materials from that period, but after digging through the archive section in the library, I came across several industry journals that gave me leads to other documents. Right now, my main concern is keeping it within the 4,000-word restriction. There's just so much to include. I might need 5,000 or even 6,000 words to properly cover everything.
Yes, that sounds like a broad topic. You might consider narrowing it down. Perhaps concentrate on the marketing strategy and just briefly refer to the reliability issues, rather than going into too much detail there.
That's a great idea. That'll definitely make the scope more manageable. Also, how would you like us to submit it? Should I print it and leave it at your department mailbox?
You can do that, but I'd actually prefer it if you just send it to me via email as a file attachment. You've all got my email address. If not, you can leave a hard copy with the front office. Just make sure it's clearly labeled for me. Right, Natalie, how about you?
I haven't really begun yet, but I've settled on a topic. I plan to do most of my background reading this week and aim to start writing over the weekend.
All right. What are you planning to write about?
I'm going to examine how restaurant chains use customer surveys to shape their menu offerings.
Will you have enough time to gather that kind of data? It could be a tight squeeze.
I think I'll be fine. I've already checked the library archives and located one magazine that reviewed several national restaurant brands in the UK, and a trade journal that did something similar in Australia.
Just be cautious about relying too heavily on those publications. The university has a strict policy against plagiarism. Be sure to cite your sources correctly in a reference list and try to draw your own conclusions. Also, don't delay too long. The analysis might take you some time.
Okay, I will. Thanks.
Now that we have answered question 24 to 27, we can see the answers to these questions via email, customer surveys, library archives, plagiarism. So I would strongly recommend you listen carefully to know if it is in plural form or in singular form. So for example, customer surveys is in plural form, and library archives in plural form also. So take note of this, and of course the questions would always be in order. But in our previous exercise, in the previous lesson, there is a particular exercise that a particular question came before another. So it could be a very rare exception. So take note of this. If a particular question is not in order, which could be an exception, but usually you would have the questions always in order, and the listening audio recording would be in line to the questions order. Okay, now we move on to the last question type, which are true, false, not given questions and yes, no, not given questions. So these questions are called polar questions. What do we mean by yes, no, not given questions? These are questions which only requires you to say yes, no, or not given. So what do they mean by yes? Yes, as you can see in the slide, yes means that the statement agrees with the claim from the speaker, of the speaker. So the statement is in line with what the speaker has said. And no means that the statement is not in line, or it contradicts what the speaker as said. And lastly, not given means the statement is not mentioned or is not clarified by the speaker. Okay, now let's listen to the audio recording and then we answer the questions yes or no.
So, how do you plan to carry out the peer assessments?
Oh, every pupil will be required to write a diary, which includes group projects, presentations, and in-class discussions. They'll put down their remarks. I'll collect them on a regular basis, which can also help me see whether they can keep up or not.
Excellent. What else are you considering?
In addition, I also plan to do video recording. I've already purchased a camera just in case I miss anything important. I can go back and review their performances anytime I want.
Would you record every in-class activity?
No, I'll just keep track of an in-class simulation, which would require every pupil to fully participate. Students will act as members of a city council meeting, discussing issues like whether or not prohibition should be instated in the United States.
That's a very creative and thought-provoking approach. I'm curious to see how it works out.
Yep. Now that we've listened to the audio recording, we could find out that the first question is yes, while the second one is no. So the other part of it is true, false, not given questions. True, false, not given questions also means that something is true if it's in line with the information, something is false if it's not in line with the information, and something is not given if there is no information that mentions that. Let's listen to this audio recording and then we answer the questions.
So, Kevin, how did it go preparing your class sessions? Is there anything in particular you'd like to talk about?
Well, this will actually be my first time teaching in a middle school environment. After nearly 7 years of studying educational theory, I really want to apply those ideas practically. But at the moment, I'm feeling a little stuck. You see, the subject I want the students to investigate is a bit advanced. I'm concerned that they might struggle with it on their own. So I'm looking for ways to design more engaging and effective learning strategies. Do you have any advice, Professor Allen?
You should definitely look into a book called Dynamic Instruction, written by Dr. Helen Murray. She recently joined the faculty here, just last term, and students already appreciate her innovative techniques. The book outlines a variety of instructional strategies, including some on collaborative research, which may be exactly what you need.
You mean splitting the class into smaller teams for joint research? I hadn't really considered that. How does it actually work?
Dr. Murray has shown how valuable that approach can be. The idea is to promote student cooperation so they can present findings together as a team. It's a great way to help them build individual viewpoints and strengthen their communication skills.
I'll be sure to find that book. Maybe I can adapt some of those core ideas to use in my lesson planning. Also, I've been thinking about including both observational and non-observational techniques in my methodology. Would you mind reviewing my plan?
Good. Now we have answered the questions. We can see that the first question is false. We can also see that the second question is not given. There is no information about the second part of the question. Also, it's true. The third question and the last one is false as well. So these are question types which you have to put at the back of your mind while you are practicing IELTS listening. It's important to practice these 6 question types that we have discussed in this lesson. Practice and practice and practice makes perfection. So this marks the end of these question types. See you in the next module.